Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, September 25th, 2014. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5. I am Dan Rubin. We are days away from the Bearcats invading the shoe. I'll have a prediction on how I think that will turn out when Gunner Kiel and the boys come calling. But it's Thursday. That means an extended sit-down with 24/7 Sports recruiting guru Steve Wiltfong. And I'm going to lay out my claim to Steve and see what he thinks of this. I believe this weekend is one of, if not the most important recruiting weekends of the year, and there's a big reason why. Stay tuned to find out here on the Bucknuts Morning 5. So what exactly can we expect from the Buckeyes and Bearcats Saturday night in the shoe? I'm very optimistic here, people. I feel even a little too optimistic. I just think this is going to be a tour de force for the Buckeyes. The bye week leading up to it for a young team to me is a huge advantage, regardless of what happened with the Bearcats. I also would like to see Gunner Kiel go through some adversity and get hit a few times and then stand up and make plays. Even Michael Brewer, who had the performance of a lifetime for Virginia Tech a few weeks ago, was not the same player in the third quarter after he got pounded a few times. Unfortunately, he recovered from that. Last year against Wisconsin, I thought the difference in the game was the hits on Joel Stave started to add up, and he made some mistakes down the stretch. I am counting on the law firm of Bennett, Washington, and friends to get through and make Gunner Kiel realize that his wait to be a Division I quarterback is one that's going to come with some serious pain when you head to the shoe. If it all goes as expected, I do think it's going to be some scoring. So I'll take the Buckeyes 42-26.
It is Thursday, and we are once again pleased to be joined by 24/7 Sports recruiting guru Steve Wiltfong. Steve, I'm going to lay it out there quick. It is my assertion that this weekend is the biggest recruiting weekend of the year for one reason in particular. Dwayne Haskins, the class of 2016 quarterback from Bullis in Potomac, Maryland, will be on campus. It's my opinion that, yes, we all know that Haskins is the one they want in the class of 2016, but if you look at the Buckeyes depth chart and the ages of the players on their roster and those coming, I think that J.T. Barrett, the current starter, is going to hand over the reins to Ohio State's offense to whoever is the 2016 quarterback. I believe it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, or that Ohio State wants it to be. So that makes it the most important recruiting weekend of the year just because the quarterback is so important. Give us an idea of where they are with Haskins, if you feel it's that important, and just an update on the quarterback recruiting with this kid.
Well, I do think it's a big recruiting weekend at Ohio State, their second big recruiting weekend of the year. They'll obviously have at least one more big one when they play Michigan, but they'll be bringing in talented prospects all year, especially talented underclassmen. This week is loaded with talented underclassmen, led by Dwayne Haskins, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the class of 2016. One of the best quarterbacks I saw this summer in a camp setting, and Ohio State is the team to beat. I'm going to say not so fast, my friend, on J.T. Barrett handing over the starting quarterback reins to the guy in 2016, because Ohio State's 2015 quarterback commit may be on campus this weekend. I think he is on campus this weekend in five-star Torrance Gibson. Torrance Gibson could easily be the next trigger man in Columbus as well. He is very dynamic with the ball in his hands and a guy that is evolving as a passer. I think Ohio State has their next two quarterbacks on campus this weekend, but it's definitely a loaded group, and several guys are visiting that I think will eventually be Buckeyes besides Torrance Gibson and Dwayne Haskins. My 24/7 Sports crystal ball reads the Buckeyes for both of them, but I also think that they will ultimately land DeMario McCall. I think Ohio State is the leader right now for Austin Mack. My crystal ball says Notre Dame right now. Notre Dame has never really lost a recruiting battle in Fort Wayne. That doesn't mean that they'll go undefeated forever. But Notre Dame currently running number 2 behind Ohio State. So I think that Ohio State is certainly in prime position to beat out Notre Dame and win that Fort Wayne, Indiana battle for that top 100 receiver. Luke Farrell was a guy that I think had a great camp at Ohio State this year. Him and Jake Hosman are both on camp.
Farrell, the tight end, yep.
Yeah, Luke Farrell and Jake Hosman, the two touted tight ends from in-state. It's certainly debatable which guy you like better between Jake Hosman and Luke Farrell. Jake's ranked higher than Luke by just about everybody. But I've talked to college coaches on the next level that feel Luke may be the guy in that class from Ohio that is indeed number one. So I could see those guys being in Ohio State's class one, both. We'll see. You got Michael Bennett.
Hold on one sec on the tight end stuff. I want to stop you right there. We're hearing, and you're so plugged in at Notre Dame, we're hearing that Houseman may be a Notre Dame guy. But it's very disappointing to hear that, the Eichenbergs, Kramers, and Housemans of the world, who are three of the highest-rated linemen or tight ends, guys up front in Ohio in years, could all be leaning to Notre Dame. Are you hearing that about Houseman as well?
Well, my 24/7 Sports crystal ball says Notre Dame for Houseman. I thought
I guess you're hearing that, aren't you?
Yeah, talking to people after Jake visited Notre Dame for the Michigan game, some folks that were hanging out with Jake thought that Notre Dame was the team to beat, but he is by no means making a college decision today or tomorrow. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in Columbus, but I obviously wouldn't be surprised if he ended up at Notre Dame. And when you talk about Jake Hausman, Tommy Kramer, and Liam Eichenberg, they're from Ohio, but you start talking about St. Xavier, and you talk about Elder, and you talk about St. Ignatius, and those are three schools that Notre Dame has a track record in itself, not just landing athletes, but just landing students from. So there's some strong Notre Dame ties there. You talk about Tommy Kramer. The family's very tight with former Notre Dame tight end Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph's going to be at the Elder game when Kyle Rudolph's going to be at the Elder game next week, and then Tommy goes to visit Notre Dame for the Stanford game, and Kyle Rudolph's going to be at the Notre Dame-Stanford game. And
not good.
There's absolutely no question where Kyle Rudolph would like to see Tommy Kramer go to college. Now, that's just a small piece of the puzzle. Tommy Kramer's not making this college decision based on what Kyle Rudolph's telling him, but it certainly doesn't hurt that Kyle had an amazing experience at Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame's a team to beat for Tommy. I think they're number one. I feel good about the intel there, but there's no question that Tommy's still very high on Ohio State as well. So he's going to be in Columbus this week, and they're going to be watching the offensive line closely and Coach Warner and talking to Coach Meyer. And Ohio State's not out of this. I just like where Notre Dame stands with Tommy Kramer. And then Liam Eichenberg, in the summer he named Notre Dame as leader, but there's a long way to go for him. He'll decide next summer. So he's getting up to Ohio State for the Michigan game. That's his only visit scheduled for the fall, with all his games being played on Saturday.
So who else should we be looking for this weekend that'll be here to visit?
Well, you got the two offensive linemen, Michael Bennett and Michael Jordan, on campus. They both have offers. They both could easily end up in Ohio State's class. Bennett might be a little bit tougher to pull away from Penn State, but Michael Jordan certainly was very impressed with Ohio State, earned his offer at Friday Night Lights, and Bennett's been to Columbus, I think, a couple times now. Austin Robertson, the big 6'5", 240-pound defensive end from Fort Wayne, has Notre Dame as his leader, but Ohio State has not offered yet. I think an Ohio State offer puts the Buckeyes right there next to the Irish, and Austin Robertson and Austin Mack are not expected to decide until next summer at the RAS camp ran by AWP, Athletes with Purpose. That's where both those young men train and work out with many of the top Fort Wayne athletes, not just football players, but baseball players.
Yeah, I know it's a cliche, but are they a package deal, you think?
No, I don't think they are, but I wouldn't. I think that they would go their separate ways, but I think that there's a good chance they end up at the same school. They train together, they work out together, they go on their visits together. So they're certainly talking a lot. So when it's all said and done, they'll have all the same offers to sift through, I think, and they'll be taking the same visits this summer into the spring, or this summer into the junior days. I'm losing track of seasons, but they'll be traveling together, and I could see them very well playing their college ball together. But I hate the word package deal unless they're twins.
I know it's a cliche. I just had to ask just because there's been enough written about it. And in this case, when the guys actually go on their visits together, it's worth a look. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the final question that has to be asked of every recruiting guy that goes on every visit or every interview here. Who, if anybody, should be on commitment watch this weekend? when it comes to Buckeyes?
I would put Torrance Gibson on commitment watch. If he pulled the trigger this weekend, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I think that Ohio State is clearly out in front. I mean, I don't even know who's second. That's how far out in front I think Ohio State is.
You're a fan of races of that ilk, by the way.
What's that?
We're a fan of races that go in that fashion.
Right, no question. You got Jerome Baker on campus. He's obviously not going to commit, and we didn't talk about him, so we're kind of switching gears. But I was at Jerome Baker's school Monday. He got his U.S. Army All-America jersey. He's visiting Ohio State this weekend for the night game. He's coming back later for an official visit. He told me that unless something happens with the Florida staff, he's most likely going to end up in Gainesville. I do think that Coach Durkin, his recruiter at Florida, did a fantastic job recruiting Jerome and recruiting the School of Benedictine. So there's some strong ties there. That it would be tough for Jerome to change his mind on Coach Durkin. But if you remember leading up to his decision, I talked to Jerome that Sunday, 4 days before his decision, I believe it was, and he was wearing an Ohio State hat and told me he was leaning towards the Buckeyes that day after leaning towards Florida for months. So Ohio State made up a lot of ground there in the end, but then he went with the school that was his leader for the majority of the time, and he chose Florida. And there's no doubt Jerome Baker's surrounded by Ohio State fans. His family's Ohio State fans. So you just never know what's going to happen. But right now, Florida is certainly still in strong position, and they got another tough game this week. And Ohio State's got a tough game this week too. So we'll see what happens this week.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Let's fast forward to whenever here, and Florida decides to can Will Muschamp. How would that affect the Steve Wiltfong's crystal ball prediction for Jerome Baker?
Well, I think it all depends on what happens with Coach Durkin at Florida. There's certainly going to be a lot of excitement.
Assuming the staff leaves then. Let's just assume there's a clean break.
Well, if there's no staff at Florida, Jerome Baker will go to Ohio State. I think Coach Durkin had a lot to do with Jerome picking Florida. So if Coach Durkin's no longer involved with the Gator program, I think Jerome Baker goes to Ohio State.
That's the way we're going to end it. We appreciate Steve joining us every Thursday for this knowledge you can't get anywhere else. Steve, have a great weekend.
Dan, take care. See you guys.